that, Kath?
Hey guys,
You guys changed.
we're getting ready to go, so hang in there. You're gonna lose my, gonna go live with my mic in just a sec, so hang in. Hey guys, welcome to Six's Planet Pulse. I'm your host, Kathy Six. We're at WJLQ99.7, and today's Thursday, February 12th, 2026. Thanks for tuning in. Maybe you're on the radio at 99.7, maybe you're streaming at WJLQ.com, or you're one of my Facebook Live friends. Don't forget, you can always call and give your thoughts, ideas, responses, whatever you would like to chat about, at 231-900-0997. Again, that's 231-900-0997. So give us a call and we'll have a little chat. Hey, remember we talked about on Tuesday, if you like chocolate and wine, I'm double in on those two. Teddy Spaghetti's on Panaluna is having an event on Valentine's Day. So if you're looking for something to do from 5 to 10, it's going to be a photo booth, a chocolate fountain, gelato station, wine tasting. Sounds like something you could take someone to that you might enjoy. Also, HeL is having a flash event. I've never been to this tattoo parlor. However, if you're interested and you know something about it, you might be interested. They do have walk-in piercings on that day. It's on Valentine's Day as well. And you got to sign up, though, for a tattoo time. I know they can take a long time, depending on the size. Got a few myself, and some of them can take quite a few hours. So if you're going to do that, I'd sign up ahead. Indeed, on Friday, looks like there's going to be group therapy at the Freeport Eagles. So if you're into dancing, that's a good band to dance to. I've danced to them before. If you like that kind of music, feel free to go to Freeport Eagles on Heights Ravenna Road. The band starts at 8 o'clock. All right, let's get into some facts and figures and information. Boy, we have a show for you today with so much going on. Did you hear that the SAVE Act has passed through the House? That's right, the House passed, and thank you to the one Democrat, only one, who voted for it. Thank you for listening to your constituents, because as the data I gave you on Tuesday, we know that the majority of people of all persuasions and genders want to have the photo ID requirement of citizenship and their voter rolls cleaned up. That's what the SAVE Act is all about. Now, I know in Michigan, we were working on that and trying to get that in our state, but if it is passed in the Senate and is signed into law, then it won't have to happen here in Michigan. It will be for every state. This is a reminder, though, some people are saying, oh, they're just trying to take over our elections. No, this is just rules and regulations that would prevent fraud in the future. Well, not all fraud, but most fraud. It's not taking over elections. The states would still run them. It would just mean that states have to follow certain guidelines. They already have rules for guidelines. This is just reminding us that it's important that we make sure that it is citizens who are voting. I saw a great picture the other day of how this could be done quite easily. You put at the top of all photo IDs the words citizen or non-citizen. Just gets printed. This is something that can be done on a computer. because when an ID is printed, all your face shows up on there and all your facts get printed onto the plastic. All they need to do is add that little piece into their programming, and every state could do it fairly easily. Now, I know there was the complaint by, I believe it was Schumer, who said, oh no, that's Jim Crow 2.0. We'll get to that later in the broadcast. I don't know if you watched the hearing before the House Judiciary Committee with Pam Bondi, but it did get quite heated. Hey Nikki, welcome to Facebook Live. It got very heated. Pam Bondi looked very, some might say aggressive, others might say assertive. I think it depends on your point of view. If you are one who thinks that she was being attacked with the questioning, you'd say she was being assertive. If you believed that the Democrats had a right to ask some of those questions, you might say she was aggressive. But with that said, what happened? Well, what we all know about formal hearings today is they are a soapbox. They are no longer about getting facts and information. This was supposed to be how things are being held, or things are being done by the DOJ. How is the criminal activity going in the country, etc. But that's not what happened. Guess where it led most of the time? You got it. Plow the other party and go after Trump and the Epstein files. That's where they wanted to spend their time. Let's start with Ted Lieu from California, who said that there was evidence that Trump was guilty. And here's how he strung this together. He said, was Prince Andrew at parties with Epstein? And if Prince Andrew was at parties with Epstein, that makes him guilty, which actually it doesn't automatically make you guilty, just being at a party. You need evidence that he was not only at a party where there were victims participating in prostitution, but when we talk about prostitution, not necessarily all of them are victims. However, prostitution is illegal. Okay, so Prince Andrew was definitely on the island. Now, being at a party doesn't make you guilty. Going to the island and getting some of the services does. Okay, so he is addressing her as, okay, why haven't you brought in Prince Andrew and convicted him of crime? Well, first of all, he's not in this country, and he has been called to cooperate and come to the United States and testify, and he has not. So far, there's not much we can do when he's outside of this country unless that country cooperates and forces the issue, which they have pushed for. The Prime Minister of England has asked him to cooperate. But regardless, okay, so he takes this. He says, well, if Prince Andrew is guilty because he went to a party, then anybody else who goes to a party must be guilty. I know this train of logic is getting really strange, but this is what he said. Essentially, he said, okay, so Trump was at a party with Epstein, so he's guilty of a crime. And indeed, I did see some video of Trump at a party. It was 20 plus years ago. He looked quite young. He looked like he was maybe in his late 30s, early 40s. And Epstein was a very young, I don't know what they even, if Epstein, how deep into any of this even was at the time. They were standing there talking and kind of moving to the beat of the music. That's it. They were at this party together. But according to this Ted Lieu, therefore he's guilty. And Bondi states, well, Trump didn't commit a crime. Because essentially being at a party doesn't mean you committed a crime. And Lieu accuses Bondi of lying under oath. She didn't take that well. She turned to him and said, unequivocally, don't ever accuse me of committing a crime. And that was a very, very heated moment, but most definitely she was angered by his insinuation. And I was frustrated and confused by his insinuation, not just of her lying under oath, but how does being at a party commit a crime? I mean, how many parties have I been at where somebody near me has committed a crime, and I don't know that? Does that make me guilty? That just was that was a big stretch. Then Bondi there were other issues, but there was an accusation that I checked on that simply the words that these senators say does not make it true or make it akin to a crime. Just because you say it doesn't make it true. And a lot of these senators and congresspeople just seem to think that, well, I said it, and so it's a crime. It's true. I said it. It's a crime. It's true. So that was interesting. There's a lot of accusations by politicians, and what I found is there is no accountability for that. So if they make accusations, if they make accusations, that doesn't mean they necessarily have let me correct myself. I got caught up in my own words, but just because you say it as a politician doesn't make it true, but also, why aren't they held accountable if they say things that aren't true? They can simply state them, get on their soapbox, state them, even though they're not true, and there's nothing the person sitting in front of them can do about it. There's absolutely nothing they can do. They can try to answer, but it always breaks into arguments. So then Senator Briggs, he asked why Harris and Biden didn't release the files during their time period. Because if Trump is guilty of a crime, what better time to do it than then, right? Because then Trump couldn't have run for the 2024 election. He also pointed out that the Epsteins were invited to a fundraiser by Obama, or Epstein was invited, he himself. Why was there not an outcry against the Obamas for inviting him to a party, which, by the way, was much later than this video of Trump and Epstein at a party? So from an evidential point of view, it's not a commission of a crime simply because Epstein was at a party with them. It is no more guilty on the Obamas as it is on Trump, as it is on Andrew. You have to get past that part and come up with actual evidence, because being in the same room does not make you guilty. Senator Scanlon from Pennsylvania asks Bondi to commit to providing them a list of domestic terrorists. Bondi, who previously, she kept trying to answer questions, and Senator Scanlon wouldn't let her do it. He kept interrupting her and kept saying, no, that's not, he just kept stopping her. I guess he didn't really like what she was saying. But Bondi states, you know what? You won't let me answer, so I won't provide a list, essentially. If you let me answer a question, we can move forward, which I thought was kind of interesting. Scanlon then goes on to say that the list might include, now capture this, might include anyone who disagrees with the administration currently in office. So he makes a supposition here with no evidence whatsoever. And then implies that Good and Preddy would be on the list as terrorists. A list, by the way, she's never seen. States out she's never seen it, but then decides who's on it. And she also stated, no one who agrees with the administration will be on it. How can you get away with those kinds of comments? It just baffled me. This was not a fact-finding mission. This was something altogether different. I noted there was a lot of talk about victims and redaction of names, and it wasn't ever pointed out that many of these women who were part of Epstein, a part of the whole island and what was going on, many of these women were actually groomers. They were grooming they were grooming young girls to also become a part of the situation. That's not a victim anymore. Now you're a predator. So when they say there should be no, they imply there should be no women's names or pictures being shown. But how can we say that if some of these women were actually part of the predatory problem? In addition, if they're over 18 and they're being paid, they're not being trafficked anymore, unless they have the inability to leave. And from what I understand, there was a lot of women who came and left as they chose. They went back and forth with this plane. The money was so good that they would just come back. Okay, that's not a victim anymore. That's a prostitute that is breaking the law. I wouldn't want to have to go through all of those millions of pages and documents to figure out which of these women were actual victims and which weren't. All underage would automatically be victims. All over age, though, each one has to separately be considered based on what they did. So I would imagine it gets very tricky. Now, Senator Raskin, he goes off on some tangent during about Trump suing different entities. So he starts talking about that. He says, you can't, as president, receive any money outside of your salary. Which, by the way, Trump doesn't even take the salary. He donates it. And I'm like, where is he going with this? And Raskin states that Trump, he has a right to sue people and receive money if he sues people. Okay, so still, where are you going with this? Hey, Dave, welcome to Facebook Live. And he says, but if he takes even $1 of what he gets from suing someone, doesn't that violate the Constitution? Because he took money outside of his salary? It's like, are we splitting hairs here or what? I mean, if he sues and that money gets put somewhere until he's done being president, whatever, why do you care? Why are you trying to find some stupid little loophole and say, okay, he's breaking the Constitution? He lost me there. Senator Klein finally got off the Epstein files, thankfully, and talked about safety in general. Thank you for that. He talked about criminal activity. He asked about it. And it was a refreshing change. I was tired of hearing about the Epstein files, frankly. He started asking actual questions. Pam Bondi was able to give actual facts. And she even was able to talk about some of the safety measures that had happened. For example, the head gang member of MS-13 being captured out of Virginia. Klein then goes on and asks if Bondi would help his state in dealing with fraud. She said, yep, we got your back. We will absolutely set something up for you. And Klein was like, all right, thanks. So he was thinking outside of the political party, and he was thinking about why she was there in regarding to safety, which is literally her job. Chairman Jordan asked why they were able to, under the Biden administration, get their records of Republican records, get their phone records and other communications of private information of all these Republicans, but no Democrats. And when they finally did get one Democrat's information, they paid $20,000 to get it. But nothing to get all, what? That is suspicious, for sure. So what's so frustrating is that the Dems prepare to tear up whomever is before them. They're going to do it for 4 years. There's no intention of working together. The intention is, how can I rip this person up and how can I hate on Trump? It's basically what it comes down to. It's very, very frustrating to watch. And granted, sometimes the Republicans give them a little bit too much leeway. And they need to ask hard questions too. But you know what would be a better use of time? How about they ask questions they like, questions that aren't a form of ammunition. Okay, like maybe they could say, without malice in their voice, and this is important, can you tell us what is currently on the agenda with your team? Or, how soon do you think it will be before we have the full list of people arrested by ICE? Or, maybe would you be willing to meet and privately go over with she or her team to what was redacted in the Epstein files? Maybe they're curious about that and want to know who was and who wasn't. Why not ask if they met their goals in removing terrorists off the streets? And if not, what hurdles are they facing? Those questions would be real questions, where your goal is to get the most out of your DOJ, get the most out of your crime reducing activities, and get Bondi to help and assist this country in being safer. And that was not what was happening at that hearing. It was a clown show, essentially. Just a complete clown show. So with that said, I'm going to leave you with the concept clown show in your head as I go to break. And when we come back, I'm going to take us on to another topic, actually several other topics. Don't go away because it's going to be good, I promise. All right, we'll be back in just a few. Sorry, you guys keep following me. It kept going like that.
I know, but it just let you leave it going.
No, see, it's oh. Sorry, you're falling. We're trying to fix the tape. Tape is the answer to everything. Gotta get the music up. You following again? We need it on this. Duct tape. Talk about a clown show. There are comedy theaters over here. There's no good place for me to put this. So, no, it's moving.
Let it go. It won't claw off completely.
If you guys fall, I'm sorry. It's been interesting. Hey, welcome back to Six's Pundit Pulse. I'm your host, Kathy Six. And you're listening to Six. I'm not sure that
I'm hearing you.
Okay, sorry about that. But you're listening to Six's Pundit Pulse. I'm your host, Kathy Six, and we're glad you're back with us. Either you're listening to us via 99.7 radio, or you might be listening on streaming at WJLQ.com, or maybe you're one of my Facebook Live friends who we've had a lot of fun with y'all tipping over there. So if you're listening on the radio, you have no idea what I'm talking about, but we've had some fun with my Facebook Live people. All right, so I want to talk a little bit about the Guthrie situation because it seems like it's been all over the news. It is a big deal. So Nancy Guthrie, as most of you probably know by now, since it's been on the news so often, is the mother of a host on the Today Show. And they are spending a ton of money, time, and energy to find her. She's a woman in her 80s, and it looks like the person was pretty professional, right? Came in, tried to get rid of her camera evidence, which they were able to get. They had on enough clothing, via gloves, jacket, face masks, everything that would prevent DNA from being discovered at their house. I do feel, and I don't know if you feel the same way, that there's been kind of an unfair advantage or amount of time to this case versus similar cases where people have gone missing and there's evidence. It's like they've got the whole cavalry out, and I have a serious doubt that she is the only one in that state with that experience, or in the nation for that matter, to put so much time and energy into what's happening. I don't think this is just happening to her. The crime scene shows that there was blood near her computer, which means something happened there, and it was her blood. My thoughts on that, perhaps what the police are thinking, they attempted to try to get money from her, not physical money, but money via the computer and transfers. She may not have cooperated. There was blood leading out the door, so then they obviously took her. Didn't get what they wanted. But I highly doubt she's the only one that this is happening to. Is this something that we're seeing more and more in places where you have people who clearly have a good deal of money? So maybe you have very large homes, maybe it's an elderly person living alone, they find this out, and you go in, and the safest way to get money from them is by transferring it into some offshore account that you could pull and nobody knows exactly who did it. If this is the case, hey Liz, welcome to Facebook Live. If this is the case, then I want to know, are we spending more time really looking into any kind of trends that are going on in regards to maybe not like a terrorist group per se, but a group of criminals that have learned this way of doing things. So if you think back to Somalians in Minneapolis, they had kind of passed on this great way of stealing money, and they figured it out, and they were passing it on to others and got a lot of money. Could this be something that we're seeing happening now? I don't know. I don't have the answer to that. But certainly would be something to look into. I don't know. I was thinking this other idea that came to my head as I was thinking this. What if somebody comes in and they're trying to get you to get their money into their account? Wouldn't it be cool if on your computer you had some way that if this was happening to you, that you could hit something that would automatically alert 911 that this was happening to you, that someone was trying to get you to transfer your money and steal it from you, and they would not know that it existed? Wouldn't that be cool? I don't know how it could be done. I would imagine some coding person could put that in, but that'd be great, right? Speaking of stealing and the Somalians in Minneapolis, did you hear that Walls is now cooperating? So is Frey. Suddenly, Minneapolis police are starting to arrest the protesters. They aren't actually protesters, but agitators. Agitators, yes, not protesters. Oh, suddenly we're cooperating. Why? Trump called Walls, and they had a chat. Up to this point, Walls was tying the hands of the police officers, not letting them go in and arrest any protester that was crossing the line, essentially. Well, this phone call was a reminder of the exposed chat in the app Signal. And I mentioned this a few shows ago, but just a reminder, there was a Signal chat where people who were doing these agitation protests, and I have to add that because they were attacking ICE agents. But there was a Signal chat, and it was pretty long and in-depth, and someone broke into it. Uh-oh. They found out some people were on it that made Waltz just a wee bit nervous. Let's start with, Amanda Kohler, a campaign strategist for Waltz. She was in there. She was actually a very prominent participant. Seems she was identified as an anti-ICE group leader coordinating targeted attacks and doxing ICE agents. How about Lieutenant Governor of Minnesota, Penny Flanagan? She's also featured in there prominently. In addition, there was a whole bunch of donor lists of the Signal Chat group where some of the funds that went to these people for these protests came from other countries. So we have other countries funding protests involving attacking our police authorities. Nothing to see here. Look away, look away. So, Waltz, I hate to say it, but I think the only reason you're cooperating is you want to keep that on the down low. I don't think that you should keep that on the down low. I think that should be out there. I mean, you just can't make this stuff up. I suppose the adage is, life is crazier than television. Isn't it true more often than not? All right. I can't see you, but raise your hand if you watched football, the Super Bowl this past weekend. How many of you stayed on the halftime show? So I was thinking about this because the numbers came out on who was watching Bad Bunny and who went to TPUSA, the alternate. And I'm going to give you the example using my own household. So my husband and I were watching the game, and we'd already pre-prepared to watch TPUSA alternate. We had it set as to what we needed to switch over to. We used Fire Stick, and we also have another app that allows us to move around to different things. So we had it planned to make that move. Now my mother-in-law, who was staying with us, was in the other room. And I had not set that up on hers, but it's really confusing to make those kinds of changes. And so I went into the room and I said, hey, would you like me to put the TPUSA halftime show on for you too? She said, no, don't worry about it. I'm going to ignore what's on at halftime. I know that's that guy and I don't want to watch him. I'm just going to do something else. I've got some things to take care of. I said, okay. So it was running, but she wasn't watching it. That tells you that out of the three of us, none of us were watching it, even though it looks like one out of the two TVs, or 50-50 split, was watching Bad Bunny. That wasn't actually true. So I wondered about all of these other people who just left it on their television. Maybe they got up and went into the kitchen and got something to eat. Maybe they filled that space with a bunch of friends and they went and grabbed a couple of beers and were chatting, completely ignoring it. Now it's still on their TV, which gives them a rating because they didn't change the channel. So I think that those numbers could be very skewed. If you're not willing to make an effort to change the channel or to change what you're watching, or you just don't care and you don't want to watch anything, then aren't those numbers being reflected inaccurate? So since watching TPUSA required an extra effort on our part, their numbers really reflect a true number because you had to actually go to it. It didn't just pop up on your TV. You had to change channels or you had to go to a different app or whatever it was. I would say that their numbers are accurate. Are the ones watching Bad Bunny accurate? Can't say they are. My mother-in-law didn't watch it, but it showed that she had it on her television. So did the NFL make a good choice? Well, they think they did because their numbers reflect that. They're just looking at straight numbers. So they might say to themselves, yes, look how many watched ours. We made a good choice. Let's really dig in. We need to dig in. A better reflection would be, let's do a survey and let's grab various groups who watched the Super Bowl and ask them if they were actually present, listening, and enjoying the halftime show. Just ask them that. If they were present, listening, and paying attention. Were they pleased with the halftime show? I think that would do a much better job in getting a reflection of if they made a good choice. I also started looking at some previous halftime shows, some ones that were done really well and that people were very pleased. And the ones that came up were Prince, Madonna, Michael Jackson, Katy Perry, and I think those were the ones I looked up. And I wanted to see how the crowds were acting, because it makes a big difference when you watch the crowds in the stands. Now, for all of them except Bad Bunny, the audience was darkened. So I had to really look at things like, most people back then used their phones, and they were taking video, and the lights of their phones would be on, and you could see if they were moving or not. Were they moving up and down? Are they, and then when they would go in close to the audience, I would look to see if they were jumping up and down and how loud they were screaming. So I did that. I watched all of them and compared them. In Madonna's show, the lights of the phones there was a lot. I mean, practically the entire audience, all their lights were on. The screaming was astonishingly loud. I mean, if she didn't have some kind of huge microphone system, we would have never heard her. Katy Perry's was very much the same. During Prince's performance, it was easier to see because the crowds were even not only louder than all of them, but the people were allowed to come up close to his stage so I could actually see them moving around, and they were jumping around and screaming. And then I did some investigating into people who had their phones running during halftime on Bad Bunny, because that was easier because the audience was lit up. A lot of people videotaped and then put it out on social media, and I was able to grab a lot of those. And what I noticed on almost all of them was the lack of movement. A lot of people were just standing there and staring. A few of them had their hands up. There were a few shouts and screams, kind of lower in the stands, not so much up higher in the stands. And a few times where some hands went up, and some people seemed to know some of the lyrics. I'm not sure as I was watching this, because I'm thinking to myself, did you watch your own audience? Because they didn't seem to be engaged. I mean, not like an audience should be engaged. This is a unifying event. The Super Bowl is unifying. It is, we're all watching it, and we're all rooting for a team, and we're in this together. Even though we might disagree on who we want to win, we're still in this together, right? You would want a unifying musical person who's not being political, who just plays good music. I'm not sure Bad Bunny was a good choice. He's very political in his statements. He definitely doesn't, he makes it very clear, his stance. So if it, like for example, if it were today, Madonna would be a bad choice because she said she wanted to blow up the White House because of Trump. That would be a very bad choice. But Bad Bunny's comments have been about hating America. So I don't know if that was a good idea. In addition, he sang in, of course, Spanish. So unless you already listened to his music, so you kind of knew the words, even if you didn't understand them particularly, people can't relate. And they can't sing along because they don't know it. Since he's in a country that's speaking predominantly English, at the moment of the Super Bowl, you're in a country, you're in America, that speaks predominantly English. Only just under 14% of our population speaks Spanish. Why don't you just sing in English? It's not like it was the first time that we had Spanish-speaking people who sang at the Super Bowl. For example, we had Gloria Estefan, Jennifer Lopez, and several others who spoke Spanish but sang in English because they knew their audience. I mean, this guy, Bad Bunny, could have been singing about killing a puppy, and you're just moving to the beat. That's all that matters to you is the beat, right? Because you don't know what he's saying. I went a step further because I'd heard people say, well, he isn't really talented as a singer. I had no idea. So I did some searching. And I found videos of his real name is Benito Antonio Martinez Ocasio, aka Bad Bunny, singing a cappella. They were posted, so I wanted to find out. He posted his own singing a cappella, so this was not somebody else who did it. I brought up his own singing in a cappella. I also brought up a cappella for Madonna and Prince, because I want to see, is this dude talented? Because I don't really know. When we come back, I'm going to make a great attempt, my best attempt, to play for you the clips that I found of Madonna, of Prince, and of Benito singing a cappella. And you tell me, is he talented? All right, so we're going to do that right after the break. Hang with us. Should be fun.
Support your American values. Monthly meetings are on the second Monday of the month. 2861 South.
They sort of, we gotta fix this, so I have to bring the microphone to this. Hey guys, sorry, you're gonna come down, and then you're gonna go back up, because my clips are on here, so hang in. Still. Sorry, you guys. This has just been. All right, we're gonna leave it at that. Gonna see like mostly ceiling. Sorry.
You're gonna talk about his profane lyrics?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Because I thought that was a major concern.
I just have to bring this up. I got it. I did. Oh shoot, I gotta get this on the internet. Did the commercial part?
Yeah, you did the GOP already.
I gotta get this connected or I'm not gonna have it. Let's do this one. My speaker comes out. Welcome back to Six's Pundit Pulse. I'm your host, Kathy Six, and I'm glad you stayed with us because we've been having an interesting, well, I've been chatting to you about the halftime show. And one thing I mentioned before we went to break was that I wanted to know if Benito, aka Bad Bunny, was actually talented. And so I brought up some clips. We're gonna see how this goes. I'm gonna try to play them so that you can hear Madonna and Prince. I believe I have Madonna, but if not, you can at least listen to just Prince a cappella and then Benito a cappella, okay? So I'm going to do my best to make this happen here. Get to Prince, I'm going to play it for you. Be patient with me a minute here because I'm doing my best to get this on for you. I really want you to be able to make a judgment and I'm sorry about the quiet space. Sorry, I'm not hearing it run, which is too bad. I really wanted you to hear. Really wanted you to hear him playing. Let's see if I can. I'm gonna tell you though. It was quite an eye-opening experience for me to hear the two of them and the differences in their singing. For whatever reason, and I have my player up, it is not playing it out loud for some reason. And I have no idea why that is. I don't think I have it on mute, but I want you, just test the theory for me. Okay, just test that theory. I want you to go and type in Bad Bunny, and then I want you to type in Bad Bunny a cappella. And then type in Bad Bunny, strike that, type in Prince a cappella, and then listen. And then type in Madonna a cappella, or any other musician of your choice. But these are strictly ones that I picked from Super Bowl. And then you tell me what you think. You can put this in the comments at a later time. Maybe we can chat about it on next week's show. All right, so I made my judgment, but let's move on. I do want to say though, as they were, Benito, he says, "God bless America," which is great. I was glad he said that. And he said it in English. So there was lots of cheering for that. And then he starts listing American countries. Well, there's really only one American country, the USA. There's the continent, America, but there's only one country. I guess he was assuming or saying that Puerto Rico and U.S. Virgin Islands were countries of the United States. I don't know if he misunderstood. He obviously didn't understand, because those are actually owned territories. But he also listed Canada as a country of the United States. That means he didn't understand his geography at all. But what he didn't even understand about his own country, Puerto Rico, is that it is a self-governing country, and they are a commonwealth, not like a state of the United States. They're under our federal laws, but they don't have their own statehood. They are not able to vote in U.S. elections and have no voting representation in Congress. Okay, so that's the difference between Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands and so forth to a regular state. And he misspoke and said Canada is not. He said Canada was part of the United States. Okay, they're not. Sorry to tell you that, but they're not. You would think someone who travels around a lot, because I'm sure he sings in other countries besides Puerto Rico and the United States, that he would know this. Alas. I'm gonna move on, because I just wanted to say that a lot of people, like I said, left and watched the TPUSA, and there was, I believe, 6.1 million people who were willing to go through the extra effort to do that. Leave it to USA Today, though, to say something to excuse away the terrible language and the expletives that he used, because he did do that. He used inappropriate language. He said inappropriate things, and he used inappropriate language. All right, so he did it in Spanish, thinking, okay, nobody's going to know. Well, remember, a lot of people in the United States, almost 14%, can speak Spanish, so it was going to get out. In any case, USA Today excused it away by saying, and I quote, "But one of the reporters said Bad Bunny often mumbled through the expletives or cut off the words entirely." What? How does that excuse you from using them because you mumbled through them? And I'm not sure if he mumbled through them at all. I don't understand Spanish, so I don't know if he did, but what difference does it make? They shouldn't even be in your show. You take them out. Literally, take them out. The NFL would do better, in my opinion, if they selected performers that are not political one way or another, or have not made comments that are political, or would not bring divisiveness, but unity. Like I said, Madonna right now would be a terrible choice. I know where Katy Perry stands politically, but I'm pretty sure she would put on just a plain fun show. She did last time. Speaking of Canada, I mentioned it. Did you hear there was a shooting, a terrible shooting in Canada? Generally, when you hear about mass shootings, you hear they're in the United States. That's actually not true. They are equally represented around the world. Well, not all countries, but many. We do not have the corner on the market by any stretch of the imagination, but this is a terrible bit of news. The latest shooting in Canada was an 18-year-old, Jesse Strang. He killed 9 people and injured 25. He did it at a school. The young man identified as a woman and was wearing a dress at the time of the shooting. The shooting took place in Tumbler Ridge, British Columbia, which is kind of way up there in the west side of the country. He went into the building where students had to barricade themselves in up to 2 hours because they needed to stay safe until the place was cleared. 2 of the dead, though, keep this in mind, were at a house prior to the school shooting. And we don't know who they are yet. I imagine eventually they'll release that information, but generally it turns out to be family members, usually. This was a small school. It housed only 160 students from grades 7 through 12. And they had to wait for the mounted police to get there, which took a while. Happened about 1:20 p.m. And we don't know a whole lot more about the shooter, except that he was a male identifying as a female. No motive is yet to be determined. And when the police got there, Jesse was dead from a self-inflicted gunshot. So he didn't plan on coming out of there alive. And we're hearing more and more about people who are struggling with their identity making choices like this, unfortunately. And I think it's confusion. Who am I? And we've confused a lot of young people, unfortunately. On the brighter side, did you hear about the no cell phones in the state of Michigan in classrooms? Super excited about this one. As a previous teacher, I think this is great. It is official. Whitmer signed the bipartisan bill to remove cell phone distractions from the learning time. Now, don't worry if your child uses their cell phone for medical reasons. For example, I had a child who was diabetic and his phone would alert him. That is allowed. And there are other exceptions. If your child, say, has an IEP plan in which they need to be able to use the phone for different reasons, those exceptions are being made. They're also allowed in emergency situations. But I was glad to see that teachers will be able to still use them for educational purposes as well, because there are so many resources where kids can download apps that bring learning to life. And I love that because I had 3D glasses that I kept in my classroom, and especially during my reading groups, I would, whatever we were learning about or reading about, I could put the information on, bring up, say, a 3D that showed where this person lived that we're reading about, and they could see it through the 3D glasses. It was pretty cool. I also had something called Merge Cube, and I would use the Merge Cube as a way of bringing things to life. And you put your phone in front of it with the app and point it at the cube, and everything would look 3D. So you could see the solar system or how the heart worked. It's pretty cool, and I used that and those are still allowed to be done. But just having your phone in your pocket or in your bag, in which in the child's mind is screaming out, I might have a text message. What if somebody called me? I should send this picture to a friend. Their brain is not with you. If the phone is not in the classroom, then there's no way to look, right? No way to think about it, worry about it, and I like that idea. Hey, did you also hear about these pesticides that are a problem? I know we're not close to putting down pesticides, but hey, it's going to get up in the 40s over the next, 5 days. That's exciting. Heat wave for Michigan. Anyway, it will be a while, but there are warnings about a couple of pesticides that sound pretty serious. The Department of Health and Human Services and Department of Agriculture are warning us about these two pesticides. They're called Sniper and Nopist and are being sold online formats, including Amazon. So how do you know that your pesticide is not bad or is harmful? So apparently what you want to look for on your pesticide is an EPA registration number and an EPA establishment number. Those two things, and they shall help you in determining if your pesticides are okay or not. Another good news, West Michigan made National Geographic. Did you hear that? Indeed. Well, for the beauty of the lakeshore, but primarily for the winter. I mean, we know about this. We see our own sparkling beaches, blue water, stately piers, and we even manage, even though some of us hate winter, we manage to find the beauty in the winter months. But I bet you didn't know that the hidden gem of West Michigan has been found by, that's right, National Geographic. They put in an article and they talked about the Muskegon State Park, and they were specific in mentioning the recreation area with the luge and the zip line and all of that. So, hey, we feel pretty important out here, don't we? Hey, media, fake news and lies and narratives, I always like to hit those. There's always plenty. I thought I'd throw a couple out here in our last couple of minutes. The Washington Post stated, feel like this, Colin Kaepernick was the most relevant figure to the Super Bowl. He's absent from it. Remember Colin Kaepernick kneeling during the NFL games? He created an uproar. Wait, he isn't a player in the NFL because nobody wants him. How does that make him relevant? I don't get that. And then there's Chuck Schumer, who insists that the SAVE Act isn't an issue because it's Jim Crow 2.0, even though he forgot that 77% of Black Americans want the SAVE Act. Okay, come on, why are you saying that? Didn't Barack Obama pull out his identification when he voted for the first time as president? Oh, indeed he did, and he laughed about it and said, my hair is now just gray. My hair is more gray than it is in that picture, ha ha ha. Look, I have my ID. Goodness gracious. As we're down to just, a few seconds now, and I didn't even get close to all this great information I have for you today. So I would like to do that on Tuesday. So please tune in because I have so much more to talk about what's happening in the news. I'm glad you were staying with us today. You have a great day, and you make sure that you make somebody smile. 6's Pundit Pulse, ouch. Sorry guys, that was a complete massive mess today. But it's okay. Come back Tuesday, I got a lot more for you.